Yo, Jay, we gotta look back and see how many times you brought up the LeBron can't post up JJ Barea comment.
It's one of my favorite things to say.
It's like almost every single bonus episode you brought it up.
As a diehard Heat fan, there's nothing more infuriating to me ever.
Sure.
You know he was a third leading scorer on that team during the finals? Yeah. No, not JJ Barea, LeBron.
Oh, LeBron. Oh, on that team. Behind who? Dwayne Wade's up there, I would imagine. Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh?
Must have been, yeah.
Yeah.
Are you with us, Ben?
I'm with you.
All right. JR, so continue your thoughts on LeBron before we move on. You say he doesn't have that it or that clutch gene or something.
Yeah, but he lacks that killer instinct that Michael has, Kobe has, guys like we mentioned, Reggie Miller.
Damian Lillard right now, man. Damian Lillard right now is a killer. I'll put him in.
Lillard.
So I heard Mark Jackson talking about this. And go ahead, Ben, real quick.
I just have a problem with people saying he has a lack of killer instinct. He just can't shoot. He wants to make that shot just like everybody else does. He has the ball. He can't shoot like Reggie Miller.
He didn't want to make that shot against JJ Barea. No, but I heard Mark Jackson say that, and this makes a lot of sense. He said, not everybody has that shot. I mean, that killer instinct. There's only been 2 or 3 players, in modern day NBA history that's like that. He goes, I don't have that. Most people I play with don't have that. But at the same time, nobody's saying that Mark Jackson was a GOAT, and he had a great, NBA career.
All-time assist leader, right?
I think he's number 2 or number 3 now.
Yeah, I was like, I don't know where he was at with that, but I used to hold that against LeBron. I can't really hold it against him continuously because he's become a lot better player, but he's also his best years statistically were when he was in Miami, so he's slowly on the decline. Next point. So the little trivia blip. I don't know if you guys noticed, Michael and Scottie, it said. Michael and Scottie eliminated the most 60-plus wins in NBA history. My question on that graphic, and maybe it's just me, given all the stuff that Scottie's been kind of put through in recent weeks, to me, that's a graphic that would be very easy to change and edit at the last minute. Do you think they may have added Scottie on there, or do you think he was always part of that little graphic?
Yeah, I think I know where you're coming from. So I think you're asking, like, did they add Scottie to that graphic just to kind of appease him because how he's kind of been portrayed lately?
Oh.
Yeah, and you see, like, all of the, all the news reports, especially today, I think that people are starting to report that he kind of felt slighted by all of the, the way that he was portrayed during the documentary. But to answer your question, Jay, I don't think so. I think he was always part of that graphic. When you think about the 90s Bulls, it's always, MJ and Pitt. So I think he was always part of that graphic.
Go ahead, JR.
Even though he was portrayed, I think it outweighed some of the positive things that Michael said about him and that were shown. And that's where people are having a problem with. It's just, it was showing most of the negative. I mean, there's some of the negative stuff on Michael, but it was really, it's a Michael documentary. And so a lot of it's just all him. It was a lot of focals on the 1.8 seconds of shame. I think what they could have done to help balance a little bit was bring up that Hugh Hollins call and how far they could have went, and touch more on that season, because he led all categories that year when Michael was gone.
Third runner-up for MVP, I think. Won the All-Star Game MVP. But to the context of the question, do you think they added that, or do you think it was already always in there?
It's a possibility that they added it. I could see that happening. But
one thing I did learn is they didn't even finish editing episode 10 until Thursday.
Yes, I heard too.
So Ben, what do you think on that before we move on?
Yeah,
if they edited that graphic, because basically it looks like nothing more than a PowerPoint slide.
Yeah,
with a 4-second transition.
It does look like a PowerPoint slide. I mean, just in general with Scottie, it's easier to answer to me because I didn't have negative feelings, about Scottie from this. Like, him refusing to go back in the game, you know, he was wrong for all that. But I actually came out of this with more respect for Scottie after watching this, having to deal with a personality like Michael Jordan, knowing that you need to be there when he needs you. I mean, there's no sleeping. I mean, when Mike needs you, he needs you, you know, and he stepped up to the plate. And he was first team all defense right with Mike. Him and Rodman, still the best trio ever. I mean, I think Scottie has a lot to be proud about.
I can see both sides of this. I can see it always being there, but at the same time, I could also see them adding it because of all the stuff. And I guess until lately, like Scottie, I haven't really listened to much about last night. Usually I kind of make the rounds. So one thing that I could say, well, we'll talk about that later about what people think about this. Let's move on to Gus Lett before we go back to basketball, because I was really curious about this story. I didn't know much about him. Obviously, I know a lot more about him now. It's pretty sad, obviously. But one thing that I took away from not just Gus Lett, but Michael Jordan's entourage. So I have an entourage question. Notice his entourage. He surrounded himself with wise, older, experienced in life men. And you don't see people do that anymore. I mean, that was his entourage even before his father passed. Now people's entourage, and it would have been the same thing for me, is probably my boys and my agent and maybe my accountant would have been my entourage. Like, Brian, what do you think about that approach?
Yeah, he probably had the foresight to not surround himself with people that would leech off of him. You know, you see that so much, you know, now with how many ball players, how many entertainers go broke, you know, after earning so many millions of dollars. So, you know, you could attribute it to him making a conscious decision of surrounding himself with father figures, and multiple of them, because those security guards that were with him all the time, I don't think they were anywhere near his age range, honestly. That they were all old enough to be his uncle or his dad. So I think somewhere along the line, he just made the decision that he wasn't going to let people, you know, just cling onto him and drain, you know, all the things that he's earned over the years.
Because he still had his good friends in the team. He still had his best friends in the league, but it seemed like he was still very much isolated.
And you know, like it's well documented that him and Ahmad Rashad are super close. I think him and Damon Wayans also are super close as well. So, you know, part of me maybe thinks that those guys, because they're celebrities, maybe tend to keep their relationship a little bit more private. And so, you know, when it came to who he was going to surround himself with day in and day out, you know, during the season, it was probably somebody who he could trust, you know, as much as he trusted his father.
JR, what do you think? With that approach, in contrast to what people are doing today?
I think I always say this myself, that age ain't nothing but a number. And if you surround yourself with, because they're older, I think there'd be plenty of things that they can relate to. The maturity level, it kept him in line, kept his head straight. So I think it kept him in check. It was like, you got friends, these close friends, but yet they were mature. You're right. You don't see that every day. You see these crazy entourage.
It's like, I just thought about this. It's like the CEO, like Wayne. Okay, let's go fiction here. Like Wayne Enterprises, right? So Bruce Wayne takes over, and everybody in that boardroom are older people that have been there and worked with his father. I just had that thought. It's kind of the same thing, you know. You have the board is all these wise old people that have stake in the company, although obviously they don't have stake in the company, but maybe emotional and mental stake in Michael Jordan, the company. Hey Ben, what do you got on that?
Yeah, so, well, we obviously know how close he was to his dad, what his dad's relationship meant to him. So he saw the value in an older man's wisdom. You know, he grew up with that. And so, you know, seeing these guys as somebody who had been through some things and worked hard and didn't make millions of dollars and just had a real look on life, it probably kept him grounded. He probably felt like this was something that just made him more down to earth, just talking to the security guy that works at the United Center. and just hanging out and throwing quarters against the wall, and I'll take your money anyways. It's just something that it probably was like a meditative thing, something like stress relief, just a thing to calm off.
The big question is with his security staff, are those guys stopping anybody? Those guys aren't stopping anybody. If people wanted to get to them, those guys, unless they were a bunch of ninjas like some Shaolin monks.
The real security was outside the building. They had muscle out there. This is just the inner stuff to where, like, if anything happens, they're alerted. That type of security.
I guess Gus was a Chicago police officer though, right? Before he became,
I guess well decorated.
Yeah. I could see him doing something, but as far as was that guy's name John Wozniak? This guy. I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, he might be sneaky strong. Though. You never know. You can't let the hair fool you. So.
Old man strength.
Yeah, dad strength, right? I think is what they call that.
Okay, guys, I got 4 words for you, and once I finish, let's start with Brian on the response. You guys ready? You guys know where this is going?
Not yet.
Bitch, fuck you.
Wasn't this with Larry Bird, right?
This was the exchange with Larry Bird in the hallway after after the game. So Brian, what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, it's two guys that battled it out, man, and also had a bond when they were both on the original Dream Team. But I also think it's two guys who, I guess, Larry Bird was another guy that you can count on that Killer Instinct list. He was one guy who would come around and say, okay, who's guarding me tonight? Just kind of like that one time against, I forget who it was. Was it the Bullets or was it against the Kings? I think Chris Webber told that.
It was the Bullets, yeah.
I think he was, and MJ was just like, with a cigar in hand, hey, who's checking me tonight? And so there's that famous story of Larry Bird, during one of the All-Star, NBA 3-point shootouts. And he's like, all right, which one of y'all is coming in second tonight? So it's that ultra competitiveness, and it's getting the best of one another, but enjoying the competition. And I think both guys respected each other. And, there was probably just a lot of trash talk back and forth because, Larry Bird was probably one of the best of them when it came to trash talking too.
JR, what you got on this? You bitch, fuck you.
When I first heard it, I had to rewind it because I'm like, did Larry say that or did Michael say that?
Yeah.
I had to play it back, and it was Michael, and I was like, wow. And that the thing I got of it was that they're just on that level. That respect level's there, just like with your buddies.
Yeah.
It's just like how you just say that, and there was no. You could see it in Larry's face. There was no reaction.
Yeah, he wasn't taken back.
It was
at all.
so natural. It was a natural exchange and hug, and then those words came out. It almost didn't fit what was going on, and it was just slipped in there, and I thought it was hilarious. But it just shows you the respect they have and what level that they were at with each other.
Like, I wouldn't be surprised if Larry was like, speaking of, how's your mom? Because they were obviously on that kind of level. Ben, what were your thoughts with that?
Yeah, because, Larry Bird was Michael Jordan of trash talking. So Michael is just giving it right back to him. And he knows that Larry's old, and Larry was the competitor that he was. Larry wishes he was on that baseball team playing against him, but he can't. All you can do is coach him. So they come and see after the game, and they say that because he knows Larry would have said the same thing to him probably had he beat him. And then he had to just throw it in there. He had to stop and turn around and be like, you got time to work in that golf game now, huh?
Yep.
My thoughts on that are basically the same as all of you guys. It speaks to a level of comfort, that they have with each other, and it plays right into the narrative of last week, the big debate that people had with how these guys touch each other in practice. And once you get to a certain level of somebody, then it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean anything. So I think that gives us, proof that it's all about context. Because I have obviously it sounds like, and I'm going to tell you, I have an issue with some of the things that people have issues with this Last Dance documentary. It's like they're focusing on the wrong things. They're focusing on whatever it is to fit their narrative of whatever they had before they were going into it. Let's move on to episode 10, finals, Salt Lake. We're getting close. Like, this thing's almost over. And one of the things that I pulled away that I thought was awesome before we get to Dennis Rodman leaving to wrestle is the level of respect these players have for each other after the game. Like the stars wait for each other, dressed to the nines. You know, first you saw Stockton and Malone. You know, as soon as the team goes by, Michael goes by, and then they're in the hallway now. They're not on the floor. And I hope some of that stuff is still going on today. But I don't know. What are your thoughts on seeing that? Like, Ben, what are your thoughts on seeing that kind of level of respect between competitors?
Yeah, like when Karl Malone just walks on the team bus and walks all the way to the bat where Mike is, and they just quick dad, hey, good game, and he walks right back out, and he just tells everybody else, see you later. It's just one of those things. Like, you got me. Nothing needs to be said. We just played 6 games, you know. It's just one of those things to where it's, you know, I'll try to get you next time. This is what we do. We make a career out of this. You know, we're doing good. And this is what it's come to.
It kind of, I'm wondering as you say that, and Brian, you may already have this because you kind of said something similar the last time we were talking, that I wonder if it's a bond that they kind of all created when they're on the Dream Team.
Yeah, absolutely.
Brian, go ahead.
Yeah, I think number one, it's game recognized game. So I don't think that you have to be all-time legends to be able to recognize another player no matter where he sits on the bench. But I think especially, though, if you got, you know, a few all-time greats that played in the same generation, then, of course, they're going to recognize one another. And it doesn't hurt that their time on the Dream Team really, you know, made that bond with one another really close. But, yeah, I think that's, you know, it's just one of those things where they just recognize, you know, how great of, you know, a talent that they're surrounded by. And so they just, you know, you can't do anything but, you know, show respect after a hard fought series like that. So, yeah, I didn't know that Karl Malone went onto the bus after that 98 finals and, you know, congratulated, you know, Michael and a few others, you know, and that was huge of him to do after being beat twice. So.
Yeah,
Karl Malone went right to the Peterbilt dealership afterwards.
Right.
What was going through your mind when you saw that, JR?
The Karl Malone.
Yeah, just the level of respect. Because this, I mean, even going back to when we started this with episode 9 with, you know, Reggie Miller, and you know, could it have been because I think they showed them doing it in the '97 playoffs too, but for sure the '98. To see that.
I like that when you honestly see respect between players like that.
There was one other play last night, if I may bring this up too, and it had to do in that same final series, but that was the one where Dennis Rodman and Karl Malone just kind of got tangled up and they were just rolling down one half of the court. And I always thought that, you know, that it was just like bad blood. They were ready to throw blows, but they weren't. Like, they both got up and they like high-fived each other and gave them a pat on the backside, and that was it. I always thought it was bad blood, but it wasn't.
It was just wrestling moves. It was just
wrestling. Yeah, they were just wrestling. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Karl Malone, like, threw a shoulder and elbow. He just missed when he was getting up. Like, he lunged at him. I was like, oh, my God. Well, since you brought that up, let's talk about Dennis Rodman, you know, leaving and, you know, doing the NWO thing and then coming back. I mean, what a circus, right? Ben?
And Dennis Rodman looking at Karl Malone. Did you just slap my booty?
Carmen Electra sighting?
Yeah.
Good Lord. But what do you guys think of the whole Dennis Rodman? Because at this point, you know, Phil Jackson, he shows that it's not a big deal, but he's got to be getting tired of this because I remember this, and some of you guys, you may remember this. It's like he was always some sort of distraction right at the, you know, in the middle of something at the wrong time. He still showed up involved, but it was still a distraction. Remember the announcers weren't very nice to him, especially Bill Walton. Like, he couldn't stand his ass. Oh, and this was just more fuel. I forgot about that part with the whole wrestling thing. I mean, what were your thoughts when you saw that, JR?
I forgot about it as well. As long as you perform, and that's the thing. When he's on the court, you know he's giving his 100%. I don't give a fuck what you do. If you're wrestling or you're in a movie or whatever, that's all I care about.
What were your thoughts through all that, Brian?
Hey, he always gave his 100%, right? So
Did he
if
though?
he showed up to practice, well, I'll put it this way: if he showed up to practice, or during the game, you can tell he gave 100%. But the thing is that he was just gonna do it no matter what. He didn't give a shit what anybody else thought. I think the only thing that was really the biggest pain in the ass was for whoever in the organization it is to make sure that Dennis Rodman comes back. Because we know when he took that trip to Vegas, who knows if he would have been, brought back. And then now with this, missing a practice to go and, get on a show, do some wrestling, great, he's back. But that there's a chance that he might not have. But when he was there for practices and games, he gave it. But you just had to hope that he was there.
Does Dennis Rodman like basketball? No, that's a serious question because some people.
No, I think he likes it. I don't think he loves basketball. I think he likes it enough to play.
Because we know of all sorts of athletes that they hone their skills and they find, that's their, means to an end, and they don't have a love for the game. Like I don't know if Dennis Rodman ever really had a love for the game, but he understood what the game could do for him as long as he showed up and played ball.
Yeah,
it's so funny that I was talking to my friend about the whole wrestling thing, and he's a big wrestling fan and has his own YouTube channel and podcast. So he loaned me today the NWO where
nice.
I'm gonna watch him wrestle against Carl Malone here, and then he even gave me this.
Oh, I remember that movie, yeah, with Jean-Claude.
Oh, Jean-Claude Van Damme.
Yep, Dennis Rodman, yep. I forgot about that movie.
I was going to bring that up, and I couldn't remember who it was, and it's Jean-Claude Van Damme. I remember it.
I thought it was interesting that the cover-up, basically, they didn't, there's nothing going on here. There's nothing wrong. We don't worry about it. And then how about them having to shuffle him out the back door?
Yeah.
And the media frenzy that ensued. Like, once they found out it was him, it might as well have been Michael Jackson sneaking out the back door. Because they were like, the security guys, like, we got 400 people out there who want some Q&A time with Dennis. We don't want any of that. Come on, Dennis, let's go. And understand he's the third person on this team, too. It's not like he's Michael Jordan. You have Michael Jordan, you have Scottie Pippen, you have Dennis Rodman, and you have everybody else. So I forgot about Scottie, missing most of Game 6 with back issues and being a decoy most of the game. Now, I'm kind of mixed on this because, Scottie has come out, and obviously he's not happy about how he's been portrayed. And even I had some cringing moments last night, like, man, that's not a good look because he seems like he gets beat down once a weekend. But did you guys remember that? Like his final stat line, his final stat line was 8.3 rebounds, 4 assists, 2 steals, 1 block, and 2 turnovers. So that's not bad for a role player or a guy with basically a broken back. So he still showed up and played. But JR, do you remember that?
I remember them talking about he had some back issues during the game. I didn't know it was like I don't remember it being like that bad. Like I didn't remember him going down the tunnel
multiple times.
Yeah. And the way they portrayed it, I don't know if you guys thought this was like, is this almost like kind of a flashback to like the migraine game? Is this the back game going to be for Scottie? Are they going to, so I think maybe, I don't know if he thought about that at all, but he's just like, I'm going to go out there and give it all, even though I'm hurting, my back spasms or whatever.
Yeah, because maybe you're thinking, I think I know where you're going with that. He didn't want to be known, like with the back spasm game or the migraine game, he got shit for that for a long time.
Yeah. Yeah, he got shit for it. So maybe he's like, and I salute him for doing that. But ultimately, I think he wanted to be out there. Yeah,
of course. Brian.
I had no idea that he had that injury going into that game. But now seeing everything and how he, pushed on to come back out onto the floor for as long as he did, I mean, he's got to be commended for that. I'm somebody who's also had chronic back problems ever since I was 14, 15 years old. And remember injuring my back for the first time because we were moving to another house. I lifted boxes with my back and not my legs. And then I just remember the doctor telling me, well, that injury is never going away. You're always going to have it. And every time I've had that injury, throwing my back out, you just cannot move. And so what I was watching yesterday was just, I was amazed that he was able to run up and down the floor. And then, he got knocked down a few times and to get up. I mean, if you've ever thrown out your back, you know that everything, from, the lower back down your legs is just stiff and painful and you just have no range of motion. So a lot of respect to him to gut it out for that final game. And then one thing that really impressed me was that one time out when they had to get the final stop. And he was just telling Michael, one more stop. And this is coming from the guy who had to go back and forth in the tunnel to get, some treatment on his back to loosen himself up. So, yeah, I mean, he definitely, I think with that kind of a turnaround from all the other portrayals with the migraine game and the game where he refused to come in, I think it was a nice way to cap it off for him to be able to just go through that injury. And, and that was the last game of the sixth championship.
Knowing all that, he still had 4 assists, 2 steals, and 1 block. Ben?
Yeah, and I actually do recall that back injury game pretty well. It didn't catch me off guard when they said it. It just goes to show you it's interesting because if you think about not just basketball, any sport, there's all kinds of examples of players playing through injury, right? Like there's the all-time tough games, Brett Favre, and everybody can't walk, but he's throwing the game-winning touchdown pass and all this. But you don't hear stories of people playing through back injuries because you can't play through a back injury. It affects everything, upper, lower body. It affects your movement at its core. Like, really, can you think of a better story of somebody playing through a back injury in a sport? Like, I think it's pretty phenomenal. Like, you could see him running up and down the court. He was like hunched over. He could barely get up and down the court. Even Jordan said it.
I don't think it painted him. I was that enough to validate or exonerate him from all the other 9 episodes because there was a lot of good for Scottie, but there was a lot of down points, and I feel like maybe that was an opportunity to be like, after all of that, this is what Scottie did for us in the pivotal game. But to hear Jordan talk, he's like, Scottie was no good. I had to do all the work, like I would have expected him to be like, Scottie had back problems that have been bothering him, and we really needed him out there. He was a valuable teammate, so I knew that I had to do everything I could to try to help take some of the pressure off of him. It would have been nice to have heard something like that instead of, Scottie sucks again, and I have to bail us out again. I was like, oh man, come on, man.
But it goes back to what I was saying earlier. Like, when you're Michael Jordan's right-hand man, you are the minute man. You are snap the fingers. I need you here right now. You're summoned, and if you can't do it, this is the finals. Your back's hurting. That sucks. You can't do it. You can't do it.
Wait, but Michael did say, and I think it was during the game at the beginning of the second half, if you caught it, he just was talking to Scottie, and he just said, man, I need you. You on the floor is better than you not on the floor. Something to that effect.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, the final stat line, he didn't need him to score, but he got some good stuff for somebody who can't even move around. I mean, I looked at Lou Longley's stat line that game, and it was, Scottie's was still better. Let's do our last break. When we come back, Corey's going to join us, so there'll be 5 of us, and then we'll wrap this thing up.